talk about Ian Watson because obviously he's the one of the main figures in this Salford success story. I don't speak to him as much as you, Coach of the Year. Obviously, I don't speak to him as much as you do, Gary, but I'll go to these season launches or the Super 8s as was, and every time I'd go to him, he'd be like, this is, going back towards the £1 million game or whatever. It was like describing him as a firefighter because there was always some kind of disaster behind the scene at Salford. And now it seems that everything's, from the outside at least, fairly serene and calm and everything's going well. Ian Watson is able to coach the team, as you say, not of misfits, but of very talented players and able to get the best out of them.
It's purely the coach, really, because Salford don't want the constant churn of players like 10 or 12 a year. They want it to be 3 or 4 a year. But so they try to break that cycle at the moment to sort of get players on longer term contracts. So it's not like a different team every year. But certainly what's happened in the last couple of years, you can pretty much put down to one man, Ian Watson, really, because of the way he works. I mean, I speak to lots of Salford players, and the one common thread that they all say is the amount of sheer detail Ian goes into, both with other teams and other players' games, but also their own games to sort of bring more out of them as well.
And he really likes to train players to play in more than one position, doesn't he? He's really big on his players being able to adapt to more than one position, and that's probably because they haven't got a big team to field anyway, so they need to have an element of versatility there. But he's just so calm, isn't he? Like, even in the most stressful situations, he's just so chilled. I mean, you saw at the final whistle, like, he didn't even celebrate. He was just so cool about it all, whereas I was smashing my fist on the desk and jumping.
No, you weren't. No, you were in the media area. You weren't doing any of that.
Completely neutral, just to the left or the right of the press box. So, yeah.
Obviously, Ian Watson doesn't want to get fined for celebrating. That's he's been sensible.
Apparently, that fine and the risk of the fine has actually gone.
I think the other thing about Ian Watson, and I think, you look at Darryl Powell before, who clearly is not having things going all his own way. Richard Agar would be another one. It's coaches that can get the best out of players and develop them as human beings as well as rugby players. And I think what you're seeing in both Leeds and Salford at the moment is an element of that. They've both got some young players that are clearly developing. They've both got some senior guys who are selfless. You can talk about why Leeds won, if you like, at the weekend. It's cost the core of their team, the spine of it, who are all very experienced, integrate together so well. That's tough to do when you're a coach. You've got players who've been there, done that, want to be the kingpin and the linchpin of the team, and actually they do it for the greater good. And I think that's a common trait amongst both Leeds and Salford. The only thing I don't really understand, I think we've said it for 3 years, but particularly whenever Gemma's been on the programme, is what the hell are England / Great Britain doing not having Ian Watson still involved with the team? I mean, he went over there for a tour that was difficult, learnt under Wayne Bennett in difficult circumstances, and now all of a sudden, with Sean Wayne and his regime, he's not required. I mean, to me, he's exactly what's required if England are going to win the World Cup.
Yeah, but what's going on anyway? Like, not being funny, the World Cup's next year, but what would he be doing?
No, well, I'm not in any way having a go at Andy Last, and Sean Wayne must bring in the people that he feels he can best work with and suit the way he wants to play. But for me, as just an England fan from the outside looking in, I just don't know how Ian Watson can't be part of the setup, even if he is Welsh.
Wait.
I was going to say, I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up coaching another home nation fairly shortly.
I'd have him involved.
Wayne Bennett obviously fancied him, didn't he? Taking him on the Great Britain tour.
Yeah, I spoke to Gareth Winner the other day actually, about working with Ian Watson and with the Great Britain tour. And he'd never sort of worked with him before. He was immediately sort of struck by how detailed and how adaptable he is as a coach.
We spoke about fathers and sons last week, Phil, on the show, and Richard Agar could follow in his father's footsteps and lift the Challenge Cup as a coach. I don't know if that's been done before or not, in slightly different circumstances. But as I've said before on this programme, I think he got a bad rap at Wakefield because the Wakefield fans were told he wasn't coming in by the previous owners, and then he did come in, and he started off on the wrong foot, and he was never a terrible coach. But he has that kind of reputation behind him where, because of what happened at Hull, fans don't seem to warm to him, but players always do.
Yeah, he's a student of the game in much the same way that Ian Watson is. You talk to anybody who's been coached by him, and all they talk about is his ability and enthusiasm to get the message across. He's steeped in the game. He's a little bit of a historian in the game. I think, again, it's one of those that you don't fully appreciate who he is, what he is and what he can do unless you actually work with him on a day-to-day basis. I don't think he's overly bothered either about his public image. I think he knows what he's there to do. And provided the people that pay him are happy with the job that he's doing, that he's not going to be deflected in any way by public opinion. And yeah, you know, his teams play in the right way. I think he's got a loyalty surrounding him from those that have been under him, and I love the way his teams play. And I suspect that they're not going to win every week. I'd never really heard him make excuses outside of the performance of his own team and what they may or may not have done right or wrong in the circumstances. And he's a genuine passion for the sport of rugby league. Lives and breathes it. His dad does and did and was a wonderful coach, player as well. I can't think of anybody off the top of my head where you've got that father and son coaching combination who would have both coached at Wembley. So that'll be unique. Clearly, the pictures of Richard being a kid in the dressing room when Featherstone won have all resurfaced again. It's another fabulous story, and actually maybe he will start to get some of the credit he deserves. I think the main thing that he has done is he's made a change with some people. He's got a younger generation coming through that clearly listen and respect him. But the older key heads in that Leeds team are taking on his message. And that says a lot about him as a bloke when you look at the turmoil that was immediately before him.
I wonder how much he picked up from his time in Australia at the NRL, at St George in the NRL. Whether it's how to do it or how not to do it, maybe. He might have picked a lot up from that.
Yeah, all part of his education. I think it was a different role, but just seeing how that club worked in that environment, he will have brought some of that back for sure.
I'm getting excited about this final. I haven't even got a horse to back in it. I mean, obviously, I have got a horse to back, but it's going to be a good final. And if it rains, it's going to be even better for both teams. Obviously, I love the rain.
One thing about the Challenge Cup, the BBC coverage is always fantastic. They are really good at building up the stories and getting that history in those very short spaces. Yeah, I'm excited to see it. And both coaches, regardless of all that experience, they're both bloody nice guys as well. So either one of them deserves it.